I'm not happy with what Putin's doing. He's killing a lot of people, and I don't know what the hell happened to Putin. I've known him a long time, always gotten along with him, but he's sending rockets into cities and killing people, and I don't like it at all, okay?
Donald Trump believes Vladimir Putin has gone crazy. And at the same time, Germany has just announced that all the missiles provided to Ukraine can now freely target Russian territory. A lot is happening, so it's essential today to do a quick update on the situation. The announcement was made this Monday. Ukraine's main Western allies will no longer impose restrictions on how Ukraine uses the weapons provided to them. That's what was stated, at least, by the Chancellor and head of the German government, Friedrich Merz. Although at the time I'm recording this, the announcement hasn't been confirmed by the other countries. In other words, we'll have to make sure he hasn't gotten too confident by making a solo announcement without checking in with the others. If confirmed, it would be a major shift, since until now, Ukraine's allies had refused to authorize Ukraine to strike directly on Russian territory with the long-range missiles they've provided. The stated goal back then was to avoid escalating the conflict and provoking tensions with Russia. But Zelensky had long asked to use long-range missiles on Russian territory, and that's exactly what the German Chancellor authorized this Friday. To be clear, Ukraine had already been allowed to use some types of missiles directly on targets inside Russia, but it was limited to very specific cases. Now, the direct consequence is that Ukraine will be able to strike targets deeper across the border, directly on Russian soil. These targets include logistical bases, ammunition depots, or more generally, Russian command sites used to organize attacks against Ukraine. In addition to this announcement, the German Chancellor also stated that Germany will no longer disclose the details of weapons it sends to Ukraine. The goal is to maintain what's called strategic ambiguity. So what exactly is strategic ambiguity? We talk about it a lot here, but essentially it means being less specific about Ukrainian military capabilities, in order to give Russia less information and to try to put them at a disadvantage, since they won't know exactly how far Ukraine can retaliate. Still, despite this ambiguity, we do know that some weapon deliveries may be in the works. For example, the German Taurus missile. It's a significant missile with a range of 500 kilometers. The German Chancellor had previously expressed support for delivering this kind of missile. However, the delivery hasn't happened yet, but the issue is now back on the agenda. Following Germany's announcement, many Russian media outlets published maps showing the potential range of Western missiles given to Ukraine, and which Russian cities they might reach. Obviously, these claims should be taken with great caution. They are not official statements or intentions made by Zelensky or his allies. But it does show that this narrative is widely used in Russian state media. Another potential target, which may be even more important today for the Ukrainian army, is the Crimean Bridge. Rs 332. That bridge has now become a symbol of Russian occupation. As a reminder, Crimea is a southeastern Ukrainian territory that was illegally annexed by Russia following a military intervention in 2014. Then, in 2018, Vladimir Putin inaugurated this bridge, the Crimean Bridge, which is the longest in Europe. Why is this bridge essential to Russia today? Because it's the only direct land connection between Russia and Crimea. The Ukrainian army has tried several times to destroy the 18-kilometer-long bridge. Today, many believe that several Taurus missiles could potentially take it out. Strategically, that would be important for Ukraine's army, because it would make it harder for Russia to send troops directly to the front lines. Now, as you might imagine, this has triggered strong reactions in Russia. For example, Dmitry Peskov, spokesperson for the Russian presidency, said, and I quote, "If these decisions really took place, they go completely against our desire for a political resolution," calling it a rather dangerous decision. In short, Russia claims it wants to move forward with negotiations, ceasefires, etc., and sees Western moves like this as military escalation. This brings us to the key question. Why are the West and Ukraine's allies choosing this strategy now? First, note that on the ground, the conflict continues, and Russian strikes are getting more intense. For example, overnight from May 23 to 24, nearly 250 drones and 14 Russian ballistic missiles were launched at Ukraine. Similarly, between May 25 and 26, Ukraine suffered an attack involving a record number of 355 drones. The first human toll estimates suggest 13 people were killed in those bombings. After those attacks, Donald Trump even went so far as to say that Vladimir Putin, and I quote, has gone crazy. This is one of the first times Trump has so clearly expressed frustration over his inability to end the conflict in Ukraine. We'll come back to that shortly. But it's important to understand that Ukraine's air defense system, which is essential for protecting cities from Russian bombings, is starting to show limits. According to recent analyses from various media, and based on Ukrainian officials' statements, the destruction or jamming rate of Iranian-made Shahed drones was above 50% in 2023, but is now closer to 30% in 2024. In short, Russia is doing quite well, and many allies believe Ukraine must respond more effectively and with stronger deterrence. Meanwhile, negotiations between Ukraine and Russia are really struggling to progress. Trump, for example, had promised to secure a ceasefire or peace deal within 24 hours of taking office. We've seen that it's taking more time. Since mid-February, the US has been pushing harder for a ceasefire, reaching out to Russia and Vladimir Putin, but so far without much success. The positions of Ukraine and Russia currently clash on several major issues. First, Ukraine demands a 30-day unconditional ceasefire to allow peace talks. But Russia insists that negotiations must happen simultaneously with fighting. Perhaps the most important point: to reach a ceasefire, Russia wants to keep control over the Ukrainian regions it has annexed: Luhansk, Donetsk, Zaporizhzhia, and Kherson, as well as Crimea, which goes back to 2014. Ukraine, however, firmly refuses and demands the total withdrawal of Russian forces from all Ukrainian territory, including Crimea. Although some Western allies believe it would be very hard for Ukraine to take back Crimea, that remains Ukraine's position. Beyond these disagreements, Vladimir Putin has dodged some negotiation efforts recently. For example, potential talks in Turkey had been planned. Zelensky said he was ready to meet Putin in person, but Russia ended up sending a delegation instead. Still, to stay current, there have been some small breakthroughs. For instance, there was a massive prisoner exchange. Around 1,000 people were exchanged on both the Ukrainian and Russian sides, including political prisoners. Also, on Friday, Russian diplomats said they were working on a document outlining conditions for a lasting agreement, something they plan to send to Ukraine once the prisoner exchange is complete. So those are the latest updates and potential diplomatic progress. German Chancellor Friedrich Merz says, and I quote, "No one can accuse us of not having exhausted all diplomatic options." At the same time, he claims Russian President Putin views negotiation offers as a sign of weakness, hence their desire to maintain military pressure while still pushing for peace talks. Anyway, I've tried to summarize the situation as accurately as possible so you can have a clearer picture. Feel free to join the conversation in the comments. That wraps up this update on the situation in Ukraine and the international responses surrounding it. We'll continue to follow developments closely and keep you informed with clear, detailed reports. Thanks so much for watching. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to give it a like, subscribe to the channel, and share it with a friend who might be interested. See you soon for the next update.